Well, welcome to Journey. My name is Jamie. I'm one of the pastors here. Today's going to be hopefully a lot of fun. We're in the middle of a series. Well, not in the middle. We just started it. Called I Can Relate. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how I can relate to the church and God's call upon our lives, or His invitation. It's a pretty good word. And I'm going to have Kevin Dixon, who's our executive pastor, come up, and we're going to talk a little bit about, kind of update you on where we are on the expansion of our space. We've got a challenge in front of us, we've got opportunity, but it's kind of basically give you the whole update. And for those of you who are new to Journey, going, yeah, I see there's dirt being moved around, and kind of tell us what that's all about. So we'll do a bit of a update here in a little bit. But I want to go into a passage that talks about the beginnings of the early church, because we're kind of a church that's really in new beginnings. We planted Journey, we started Journey in my wife and I in our home in 2005. We then kind of officially launched in 2006. We met in Dave Ramsey's building, the one on Mallory Lane. And he's building a little place now down the road. We're glad things are working out. In case you're wondering if it works, Dave's actually a great friend of ours, and man, it's just so beautiful to see how God is using him in people's lives. And so that's where we started, in his place. And then in 2007, we met another pastor, and so we had this small little church, and they had a small church that met in the factory. And we were like, hey, what if we merge churches? And usually when you Google merge churches, that doesn't go well, but for whatever reason, it seemed like the thing to do. And so we took kind of really two unusual groups of people, put them together, and it became this really beautiful thing. And for 10 years, we were at the factory and had an amazing time. And God in His goodness really encouraged us to move on in faith and find a new place. See? I'm doing some work. The way I used to tell that story was that there was someone who bought the factory and didn't want a church there but got kicked out. But I see it differently now. And our ministry time was done in that part of town in Franklin, and we were meant to move up the road to Brentwood. And actually our passage relates a little bit to this. But God called us to a new city. I'm grateful that it wasn't across the country, that it was just 20 minutes away. But He called us to a new city. And we would not have met many of you had we not basically allowed a certain death to that story in that season of our life and been pruned, replanted, and given a new birth. It seems like there's a pattern of Jesus' teaching about that. And so we're about 2 years into our new birth into this location. And it has been challenging, but it's also been a lot of fun. And the truth is, one of the things, Tim kicked off the service, we're more playful than we've ever been. And to me, God, there is a theology of play. Sometimes it's staring deeply at the brokenness of our lives, and that has a place. And it has an important place, because sometimes the church lives in denial or disassociation, don't acknowledge brokenness. So there's a place to see the brokenness, but there's also a space to step out of victimization and also heal and lean into faith and recognize this isn't just work, it's also meant to be play. And we serve a playful God. And to enjoy, we're actually meant to enjoy God. There's meant to be pleasure in this thing. And sometimes in religion, it's suppressed pleasure as if pleasure is a bad thing. But we're actually encouraged to enjoy God and the pleasures of this world. And we get afraid of that because we're always afraid of running off to some extreme, but instead we've lived in another extreme, the church has for many years. And so we're trying to find this place of going, how do we actually walk in freedom? It's for freedom that He set us free. But also recognizing there are specific things it seems He's drawing us toward. He seems to shift our direction. He seems to order our steps. He puts a lamp on our path. And He gives us those things so that we'll walk with Him, so that we stay in relationship with Him, so that we will be aligned with Him, so that we will awaken to our true identity in Christ. I've already started working on this fall's message and on the series, and I'm not going to give you the name yet because I'll change it probably 4 times. But I think the opening message for the fall is going to be the church. Dear God, what happened? I think that's the opening piece. And I want to walk us through what did happen. Why for so many years did we get lost shaming and condemning? Because it's kind of hard to deny that was a pattern for the church for a long time. And I'm talking to the pastors, I'm talking to the people around the country and other places around the, something is happening. You can see that there is an emerging, and this idea, and I'm going to read a couple emails I got too. Why is it so hard to believe? Somehow we were taught that we were basically bad, and God needed to satisfy his bloodlust, so he killed his son, and then we could be good. Somehow we miss the fact that God created us good, that we were a child of God first. So this message of original sin actually somehow overtook original blessing. And I think we're unpacking probably a couple hundred years of that teaching that goes, oh wait, I'm already loved. Why is it so hard to believe that? It's because we got a lot of neural pathways in religious circles of telling us we weren't, that we had to do a thing. And it's funny, a lot of times it was even contradictory. You have to do something. They would say this, no, God's grace is free. You don't have to do anything. Nothing? Nope, except. Wait, nothing? Oh, no, you don't have to do anything, except. Wait, you don't have to do anything? Well, you have to pray a prayer. So there is still a transaction. Well, no, God's grace is free. Except, you got to pray a prayer. So I got to pray a prayer. Yeah, if you don't pray the prayer, you're not in. So it's not really free. No. Yes. And I grew up in this. So if you didn't grow up in the church and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, it's okay. But if you did grow up in the church, you probably had to unpack some of this. And the idea of going, wait a second. This is actually not a transaction. It's about an awakening. I'm loved or I'm not loved. I was created in love or I wasn't. If I was created in love, then I'm already loved. And the journey of what we call salvation is actually waking up and going, oh, I'm already loved. Born again. I believe I am loved. It's very different. Okay, that's Tears in the Fall. Sorry. Anyway, okay. So, but I really, maybe we even do like a little bit of a church history thing. Like, I feel like we need to, because we talk a lot around it. Okay, I don't know why I'm doing this. Okay. I have ADD. That's why. Thanks. Go team. Okay, thanks, Kevin. Okay, back to our story. I'll go really fast to this story. The church is beginning. And in the beginning, there's a guy named Darth Saul, and he is, in church history, he's a very religious guy, super smart, and he wants to kill all the followers of the way. So there's this burgeoning new sect they eventually called them Little Christs, which is where you get the term Christians. So other people called them this, by the way. They didn't call themselves Christians. That's interesting. They called them Christians, followers of the way, and they're a threat to the current systems of power. So Darth Saul sees that this is not good, and he tries to kill him. But he has a moment with God, he has an awakening, and he's like, I don't want to be Darth Saul anymore. I want to be Boba Fett. And, sorry. And he changes his name to Paul, and instead of killing off all the Christians, he becomes a follower of the way, and doesn't just become one, becomes one of the most passionate followers of the way, and to this day, perhaps is one of the most influential, certainly writers that we have, because many of his letters were preserved and kept in an anthology of books we call the Bible. There's a story that takes place as he starts to now share the message of love that he heads on a missionary journey. So we have kind of 3 epic journeys that he took, and they're called Paul's missionary journeys. And on the second one, there's something that happens that's really significant because it alters all of history. And that's the story I wanted to tell. So we pick it up, Acts chapter 16, verse 5, and a summary verse of what's been happening is churches were being strengthened in the faith, and they grew daily in numbers. So Paul's going with a team of people. They're facing suffering and ridicule, and sometimes they've been imprisoned and jailed, and there's a lot of stuff going on. But people are completely responding to this love story. Jesus didn't come to the world to condemn the world, but to save the world. And people are responding to this, and they're going, yes, I want to be a follower of that, the follower of the way. I want to follow the teachings of Jesus. I believe that Jesus actually is the Son of God who came to rescue the world. And so this belief is burgeoning, and people are coming together, they're gathering, and they're starting to call those things churches, groups of people. Things are rocking. So the next logical move is just to continue the trajectory, where you're sitting, to the east. They're moving to the east, carrying this great love story, and he's in Turkey, modern-day Turkey, heading toward Asia. And he loves to go to influential cities as part of his strategic plan. I'll go to cultural centers, a lot of people, then they can take the message out. So there's some strategy involved in his thinking. He's a church planner. So off he goes. And there's a significant moment he has basically in an interaction with God. Acts chapter 16, verses 6 through 10. Paul and his companions traveled throughout the region of Phrygia, Galatia, having been kept by the Holy Spirit from preaching the word in the province of Asia. So it's the first thing we get, like something's thwarting him. When they came to the border of Mysia, they tried to enter Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus would not allow them to. They keep trying to get to these cities. So they passed by Mysia and went down to Troas, near Troy, ancient Troy. During the night, Paul had a vision of a man of Macedonia standing and begging him, "Come over to Macedonia, come out west and help us." And after Paul had seen the vision, we got ready at once to leave for Macedonia, concluding that God had called us to preach the gospel to them. I want to tell you how the implication of this. He's heading east toward Asia, and he stopped. Instead, he goes west. He eventually winds up in a city called Rome, which happens to be the capital of the entire civilized world at that point in time. And because he stops there and spends time there, they begin to put some roots there, and so the church gets rooted in Italy, in Rome. And eventually the gospel continues to merge from there, and it goes all into the European nations. Now, if you know church history, there's a whole lot of things the church does wrong. But there are a whole lot of things the church does right. They do crusades, there's violence, there's all these things the church totally screws up. But one of the things the church does really well is it's the primary rescuer of people in need. When people would just give up children, one of the things the Romans would do a lot is they'd just take children and they'd go put them in the woods. Like if it was an unwanted child, that was their way of getting rid of children. The followers of the way believed so much in the dignity of life, they would begin to go collect the children in the woods and begin to adopt them into their families. Eventually, this happened so consistently that when those families and those people started to get together and they would rent a facility or they eventually build a location, pretty soon people are like, well, why go to the woods? Those followers of the way people, they're constantly caring for kids, so we'll just go drop them. It's easier to drop them off at the front door. So if you ever seen a movie where they're dropping a kid at the front door of a convent or something, that's where it comes from. Because it was the Christians who were actually rescuing the children. When the bubonic plague hit Europe, it was the Christians that stayed to care for those who were dying and died with them. So we did a whole lot of things wrong, those under the umbrella of the church, and you could argue those who really had awakened to Christ and who didn't, who maybe had just been part of a religious structure or system. But there were well-meaning people who had awakened to truth in the middle of it who carried compassion. We exist. We have some reference, recollection, understanding, some reference of Christ because we stand on the backs of those people. We stand on their shoulders because they actually lived it out. And eventually some of those people wanted some kind of freedom because they felt oppressed, and they came out west, kept the trajectory. And they came to the Western Hemisphere. In the 17th century, some people put down roots, and they were working out stuff with their faith, and there were some really beautiful things about how they expressed faith, and there was some really messed up, jacked up, burning people at the stake stuff as they were figuring it out. But we're here today, those of us who grew up in America, who have some level of understanding of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, who own maybe a Bible, have one in your home, because Paul was stopped from going to Asia and went this direction instead. Now, I want to drop down to a quick practical application, because you might be here today and you might be going, man, I got to tell you, this is weird because I just really felt like God was telling me to do this thing. It's been really clear. I mean, I had this person do a prophecy over me one time, or my friends and family have been praying for me, and I really felt strongly God was telling us we were supposed to have children, or this many children, or we were supposed to live in this location, or this was supposed to happen in my career, and this was supposed to happen in my job. And I mean, this was really clear. This is what God was doing. There was blessing, and suddenly there was an abrupt stop. And I was thwarted from my intention. And I just wanted to serve people. I don't get it. And I just want to say to you at a practical place, Paul had a plan. He had a strategy. He's strengthening churches. He's loving people. The guy's getting tortured for it, doesn't it? Like, seems like his motives are pretty pure. Isn't this a great plan? And instead the Spirit says, no. He doesn't know why. He has a vision. And all he hears is someone say, can you please come and help us? He pivots, he turns, and he starts something new. We're the recipients of that pivot. You don't know how your children's lives are being affected and changed because of the pivot that you did not intend. And your children's children, and the generations that follow. I don't want us to miss the fact that sometimes we have an intention to do something good and right and beautiful, and sometimes God stops even that and causes us to shift. For Journey Church, we thought we'd be in Franklin for a long time. We loved the factory. I loved the factory. And one of the reasons I loved it was because, I'm gonna edit this. There's a guy named Tom Peters, and he writes, all innovation comes from hacked off people. And his point is, innovation comes when you're kind of messed up about something. You're frustrated it's not working. And I was in a church experience with some amazing people and beautiful people, but the overarching philosophy and structure of the church was really unhealthy. The bottom line is, a large part of the church was angry about outsiders coming into the church. They wanted to preserve it as a tower to hide out from the world. And Angie and I were doing youth ministry, and kids kept coming in who were not part of the church, and it really was making people in the church angry. And we were scratching our heads going, we kind of think this is what the Bible's all about? And it got to the point where we were like, I guess maybe we should just go plant a church. And that's our story and how we came to Nashville. Well, I grew up in mega churches my whole life, and so part of that was like, okay, so I never want the church to grow very big. But we would say this in the early days of Journey. No, I promise you, I said all these things. We're not going to grow past 300 people because that's all we should really have. We're never going to have more than one service. Only one service because we're not going to duplicate it. We will never own a building. We'll never live stream. Never show videos. Because I had all this angst in this frame of reference of what all that, I had applied meaning to what all that meant. Not realizing that God can redeem all things, and that the intent and the process and the execution have everything to do with what those things mean. Eventually we had more than one service. I remember the first Sunday we had more than one service, people were like, what was that like? Huh? No, it was cool. Like, it wasn't even a thing. Like, oh, I don't know. It wasn't even a thing. Now, buying a piece of property, that was hard. And part of it was, again, because I was part of like all the conversations like, oh my God, those kids put a hole in the drywall. And I'm like, it was me, it wasn't with the kids. No, but it was just constant complaints about the building, everything. If anybody been to the factory, you can do stuff, you can like smash things around like, oh, that belongs there. You know, it looks good. Knock another hole. You know, like that, I loved that. And so when it came time to purchase, man, I'm telling you, so if you know some of our story, it was a really hard year. There was all this change and transition, and it's totally like this. God was going, no, I'm sending you to a new place. And I just kind of went kicking and screaming and grieving. And I got to tell you, something is so shifted in my heart, and it's mostly you. It's because of you. It's because I've met so many of you, and now I'm in your lives, and the stories that are here, and so many that I know we wouldn't know each other if it wasn't because of Journey in Brentwood. We have almost an entirely new staff, and this staff is unbelievably gifted, and oh my gosh, and we're having so much fun. And I almost walked out to the crane and gave it a hug the other day. I thought that might be a little weird, but I was standing at the crane, and I was like, I feel so loved. You're beautiful. I really was. And I kind of got a little giddy, like, oh, we're going to have a building. A total shift, because I'm now recognizing, I see what this is doing for people, and I see what a gift it is. It'll always be nice that somebody's not kicking us out. That's a nice bonus. but that we're creating a space for people in need. And so many of you, and there's been like, over the last 6 months especially, so many of you sent me emails and just have been such an encouragement saying, don't stop, we've got to go forward. This is changing the way I understand God and who he is. And we've got to let other people know. And we're at the place now where, true story, I've thinking about 2 or 3 people that I've just talked to about coming to Journey. And we become friends, and something comes up about Journey, and they're like, yeah, I want to come. And I'm like, you sure you want to come? And you're like, yeah, let's get, could you wait till like August? That kind of feels weird, like don't come to the church where I'm pastoring. Or I'll be like, okay, do you have a 4-wheel drive? And then finally I'm like, okay, there's this short little window, like if you can come like right here, there's about a 10-minute, but don't come earlier, don't come later. And if you come from the north, you might die making a turn into the thing, so just be careful there. But I'm thinking about the complications, and then they're like, well, what does the building look like? I'm like, well, it's like a dentist office. It's, like if you just, if Jeremy's here, we love dentists. Jeremy's our dentist. And his office is actually way cooler. And so they're like, and I said, look, when you get in, they're like, well, what's the vibe? I said, well, I literally had this conversation this week. It's kind of a merge between laughable and charming. It's just kind of put those two together. And it's funny because we just have been like, let's embrace our limitations. And Nick Bray's one of our elders. He told us, let's embrace our limitations. So one of the things we started doing, we started live streaming. And the next thing you know, we start getting emails from people around the country and other countries that wouldn't have happened had we not had enough space and not been willing to live stream and not be willing to step into what was uncomfortable. And all God's done is continue to say, release, let go, and give of yourselves generously. And Kevin's going to come in just a minute. We're going to talk about how we do that with our resources and how we even give financially. But there's a spirit of generosity that comes even before money. Money, in some ways, you look at money, it's almost like an energy, right? Like it's something we hold on to. Imagine for just a second with your money. Well, let's do time and let's do money. And let's do, because I think sometimes we get like this in a church too, like kind of like it this way. Picture holding all 3 of those things in your hand. Like, this is my way of my preference. I'm holding my preference, I'm holding my time, and I'm holding my money. And imagine just for a second, those of you who watch Endgame, so if you're an Avengers person, just picture like suddenly everything like levitating for a second. All right, just picture letting go and those things just hanging in the air for a moment. Your money, your time, preferences, just letting go of it. You're not gripping it, you're not holding it. You're letting go of it. It's just kind of, it's just underneath your hands. I want you to do that visually. Now go, oh, well, those are God's. I'm just a steward, so I got a short walk on the planet, and I get to manage those things. And picture, when they're like hanging there, like you can push the things, they do like, and then the like thing floats away. So picture, here's your money, here's your time, and your preferences. What would it be like to hold those loosely and go, God, these are yours anyway. Where am I supposed to invest these? Where do I give them? I'm not holding, I'm not gripping, it's not mine. This is all yours. I got a short run on this planet. Even if you're 20, trust me, it goes fast. I got this short run. Where am I going to put my time, my energy, and my effort? And at Journey Church, what we're experiencing is that people's lives are transforming. I'm one of them. And there are people sometimes who are walking in who are really on the edge, almost without hope. And I thought, I want to give you a couple of these emails of people who've been sharing some of their stories with us because it just says it better than I could. First one's from my friend named Doug, and he's been coming here, found us here since we moved to Brentwood. He says, I've been struggling with the concept of love. This was his Facebook post. He goes, by the way, I posted this on Facebook. He said, I've been struggling with the concept of love, unconditional love specifically. Unconditional means without conditions. It's easier for me to love the addicted, the down and out, but loving the person who's ultra religious is a tough one. I guess it traces back to my upbringing. Being the preacher's kid was tough sledding, and believing something you were told to believe was especially difficult. We said the right words, and we tried to act a certain way, but something always seemed wrong. Recently, my wife and I have been attending a church called The Journey. I am 71, and I feel like I am doing a complete makeover. It is simple, but profound. For a guy who's been insecure most of his life, the message is life-changing. I am becoming comfortable in my own skin. I have a lot of growing to do, but I'm okay with that. You know, listen to his last line. This is Facebook. This is good Facebook writing right here. He says, "So I say this not in a cheesy way, but I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it." This is a young lady. I'm a 20-year-old student, full-time worker who attends Journey every Sunday. I just wanted to thank you for helping me find my Lord and Savior. I started attending Journey Youth Group when I was in the 10th grade with a friend. I never realized what it was like to be loved until I joined this church community. Journey Church saved my life from a very dark time I was going through in my life throughout high school. Now as I attend every Sunday morning and look forward to it all week, all I can do is wait eagerly for the next service. The church has been such an inspiration to myself, and I absolutely love and adore being part of it, as well as bringing people with me, and it brings me so much joy. I'll now be working with middle school and this fall and in the nursery. Why? To give back to such a place that helped save my life. A young mother. We've been partners at Journey for 2+ years now, and it's been such a much needed breath of fresh air. For me personally, I've really been allowed to explore my worth outside of my doing. I'm finding out that my relationship with God and the church and the way I work and act all these years have been driven by fear instead of love. I had no idea up until now. I wanted to reach out today and let you know that this past Sunday in particular, and this was a couple months ago, I sat in the back row and couldn't stop tears because I felt like God was using your voice to speak directly to me. You said something to the effect that he sees me. To one whose marriage is falling apart, trying their best to raise their child and can't see past their way of what they're currently facing, I'm reminded of my humanness and my need for grace. Remember I mentioned the live streaming thing? This is from now my new friend Madia. I like the awareness series so much that I'm sharing it with our Estonian International Church Youth Group leader. It's our 3rd Saturday morning gathering together already, and she sent me a picture of them gathering around the live stream. Madia and I have stayed in conversation. She's engaged, and she has said, and her fiance have said, Estonia desperately needs a Journey church. Would you come here and help us? So in about 4 weeks, I'll be in Estonia exploring to see if it's a place where we can officiate or where we can plant a church, and I'm going to officiate her wedding. So this is from a man named Shane. He says, growing up in conservative churches, I have an intense but unfulfilled sense of wanting to please God. Even serving as a pastor for 2.5 years did not seem to do the trick. But the teaching at Journey was used to reveal to me that this was no transactional relationship. His love and acceptance have never wavered, and lo and behold, my efforts to earn his pleasure were all in vain. The relief that accompanied this understanding cannot be overstated. For over 25 years, that has been my pursuit. And now I know it was there all along. The peace that I'm now experiencing is, quote, blowing my mind, and I realize that nothing will ever be the same. My desire to please him is actually stronger, and I am now enjoying the knowledge every day that he is pleased with me and that he likes me, that he loves to be with me, flaws, warts, and all the rest. Wow. For many years I've wandered in a wasteland of churches, longing for one that would speak to the ache in my heart, for true communion with God. And though there are many, quote, sound churches, I had yet to find one that connected me to the personal God they spoke about. As I listened to each new message, I would tell my wife, this is the church for which I longed. By the way, there's only one problem: we live in Canada. So he goes on to tell me now they have a small group gathering around the live stream. And he says, I'm trying to afterwards ask questions. And he says, I've mimicked your church's method of agitating. And it's been very interesting to see the response. Some get it and want more, and some think I'm crazy. I understand, Shane. But through it all, lives are being touched in Canada because of the message of a church all the way in Tennessee. It doesn't take a lot of effort to look into someone's eyes on a Monday or Wednesday, Friday night, and see that they have pain. And most of the time the pain just comes from the fact that they don't really know the truth, that they're already loved. I get it. I know what it's like to be on a quest to just finally convince God to love you. That was a version of the teaching I got. And I had some beautiful, wonderful people in my life. And some who modeled it really, really well. But there's a message that has to get out. And when we watch people pull in and turn around and leave, and we turn people away because we say there's no more room for their kids, it just feels really wrong. And it feels like there is a moment right now in our story where like there's supposed to be some kind of explosion. Like it feels like something where there's a generosity that could pour from us like never before. And there's an invitation for you to participate. I don't know many details. Kevin does. So Kevin, come and join me and give us some of the information on kind of where we're at. We got a new challenge because of some of the stuff that's come back once we started building, and then of course a new opportunity, and some of our folks have not yet even had a chance to participate in what we're doing.
Yeah. Before we go there, just thanks for sharing your heart about that, and thanks for that. And there's a degree of I came 3 years ago partnering up with Jamie. Our first encounter was a hug. He gave me a hug the first time we met.
He was from Pennsylvania. It was weird for him.
It was a little odd. It was more the hooking of the leg.
It did not.
But
that didn't happen.
When you're in Tennessee, whatever.
This was 2016. I was like, you might be our new executive pastor. I was the Macedonian call. Please help.
Yeah, please help. So we've the last 3 years have been, and I said this at 8:30. Feels like it's just been like running in mud, a sloth. It's been difficult, and it feels like we've hit a choke point. Thank you, by the way. I just want to say, all of you, thank you. Thank you for, and you on live stream, in the overflow. Every other church I've ever been a part of, there's an 80% rule. And the 80% rule is once a room is 80% full, it kind of levels off there. And people stop coming. And if they can't find a parking spot and it's difficult, inconvenient, all those things, generally it comes back to the middle and it kind of settles there. For whatever reason, over the last 2 years, I think God's made it abundantly clear what the reason is that the message resonates. Is that you guys have braved that. You've braved. Some of you have actually gotten stuck in the grass. And some of you have come back even though your kids, we didn't have room for your kids at one point. Some of you have come back when you've had to sit in the overflow, or you've had to, some of you have just come in and said, there really isn't room, and you turn around, walk out, go get in your car and said, I'll be back next week. Church people don't do that. Jesus followers do that. And I love being a part of that. That's right. That part of it has been really fun.
Because they're amazing people.
Yeah. Yep. And thank you. I just really genuinely
That's the easiest part of ministry.
It
Actually
is.
been.
It
and
is.
usually that's a thing in church. You're like, well, ministry would be easy if it wasn't for human beings. But we don't say that.
No, we don't.
You guys are crazy, and we love it.
We say things like ministry would be easy if it weren't for buildings.
Yeah, right. It's true.
So, and Jamie was being completely honest with you. When I first came here, there were a couple of times we had long conversations, and he was really questioning whether he wanted to keep doing it or not.
Yeah.
And it was a pivot. It was a big pivot, and that pivot is valid and it's real. And just the stories of people's lives being changed all around the world because we're live streaming, and we wouldn't have live streamed if we didn't have this problem.
Yep.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
It's a good message. That preaches. So we ventured into this a year ago. Actually, we've been talking about a building since we bought the building, and in that adventure, we came around last year and we asked the church to be a part of your story, to join the story with us, and we proposed a $2.4 million addition to this, which would have been a 2-story building out front and redoing the parking lot, an office area off the back, and then we would blow these walls out and make this twice the size of what it is.
And for those who haven't seen, there's a rendering online that shows all that.
Yep. You can go to our website and there's a rendering for that. You can see it. And along the way, I learned valuable things about bureaucracy. And I learned other things about traffic studies. And they came in and said we had to do a traffic study out front and on Wilson Pike because we wanted to add 2 entrances and exits. And they came back and said, that's great, you can do that, but you also have to put in a turn lane for those coming and wanting to turn left into the property. Long story short is that because of that, the blessing of that.
Way to go.
Yeah.
He's changing too.
It added about $700,000 to the price.
But I want to say a word about that because several people who've lived in the community are like, that light needed to be addressed a long time ago. And we had a young lady trying to turn left who was in a car accident. If you ever come from the north, you realize you're risking your life. And so it's the right thing to do for safety, and it blesses the community.
It does. And we have, one of the reasons we wanted to build a building and ask the question of this community was why do we want to do this? Isn't just so that we can get big. Part of it was we want to serve the community. We're not building this building just for us. We're going to meet in it, but we also have started a preschool. I don't know if you know that or not. It's called the Pastor Preschool. And yeah, shout out. You want to see hardworking people, come watch them work in this preschool. It meets here 4 days a week, and it is reaching lives of people in Brentwood, and it has created a vacuum. We knew it was a need, we just didn't know how big a need it was.
And it's a super unique, this Montessori-esque style. I mean, the people who do it, I mean, our people are incredible. It's unbelievably special.
Yeah, so there's people here all week. I don't know what we do with 48 kids in this little space, but we figured it out. Actually, Paige and her crew figured it out. It's a great crew of people. But with that, we've wanted to reach the community. The needs are real. The idea is real. Obviously, you've experienced the struggle. If you've been watching us on live stream and then just decided to show up sometime, you get it. But at the end of the day, we also I learned that there was a little bit of a miscommunication between myself and the contractors, and so some of it was supposed to be phased, and we decided not to phase it. We wanted to do it all at one time, so it added an additional $500,000 to the cost. Just inflation alone over the last year and a half has added money to it. The bottom line is this: the whole project, the project of putting the building out front, the offices, redoing the lot, is about $3.8 million. And I want to thank you for those of you who...
pause to celebrate that next number.
And the next number is amazing. We've raised $1 million over the last year.
$1 million.
Yeah.
And we did pledge cards. Not even a year ago. Well, I guess
It was a year ago.
right at a year
It was a year
ago.
ago.
And with the pledge was like 1.1, and already 1 million has come in.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
it's incredible.
And so it leaves us with 2.8. And we really, really want to do it debt-free. And so we're inviting you back into the story. If you're new to Journey and you are like, oh, is that what they're doing? Man, we're inviting you. If you're a part of this story already, you're still invited. And these cards are actually in the chairs. So if you want to pull them out, but we're inviting you, and we're in process. The ground is obviously being dug, and things are happening.
The bank has communicated to us. We've always
Right.
had pristine. Again, I mentioned Dave Ramsey. We keep an emergency fund. We've
Right.
always had great finances. So the bank has come back and said to us they would finance more for us.
Yes.
That's pretty special.
Yes.
We could do a game for that. See if you can get that done. But the bank said, "Hey, we're willing to come back and finance for it, but
we prefer not to.
we just want to be as aggressive as we can and ambitious as we can to try and eliminate that, and not put that on the pressure of our monthly thing."
Yeah. We asked the staff to help us kind of share what this means.
Yeah.
And so we put together a video
Great.
that we'd like you to watch.
The reason I'm most excited about expanding our space is because I run into people still all week long. And they tell me, I gave up on God. I gave up on the church. I think it's good for all of us to go, we've been burned. Building stuff sometimes feels gross because it feels self-indulgent. And that's not who we are. We're in a position to help meet people's needs, to give them hope, to remind them that they were created in love, by love, for love.
Space has been one thing that I feel like, haven't had in a while. One that invites students into relationship, not only with other leaders, but also with God.
Right now, we have limited space. So when families come, there isn't room for them to be involved.
And with that comes, for me, the heartbreak of seeing people come in, turn around and go, oh, there's no place for me here. And they go, and they leave. And when they leave, there's a little bit of me that goes, there's urgency. We got to get this done.
It reminds me of how Jesus said, I go that I might prepare a place for you. And in this new space, in this new building, we are looking forward to having a prepared environment for the children in that same way, where they are known and they know God.
And really, what we're offering is Jesus. What we're offering is acceptance and belonging without performance.
So as we think about that as a church and this place that we're building, it's an opportunity for us to care for the soul of our city. And you just think about your home and the intention of where we hang a photo of our family and how we set the table. Like, these things are very intentional.
The heartbeat and goal of our team specifically here at Journey for the music is to create distraction-free environments for people to bring their expression before the Lord.
What this new space provides us is more opportunities to meet more families' needs and more space so that children can join us.
We want to create space where people can come and ask questions and discover who God is. I'm excited about creating space for people who are hurting and need to know they're loved. And you know what? I can't do it alone. It's not like our staff can do that alone. We need your help. So my hope for this next season in our church is that we would do just that. We would come with a spirit of generosity and enthusiasm and sacrifice and give, love, and serve, and watch what God does in our midst.
We're inviting you, but we're also saying this is an investment. It's not an investment in a building. Don't see this as an investment in a building. See it as an investment in people and in what God's doing. And God's doing something with us. God is doing something amazing where He put us and we pivot and we go and we do, and we're looking to the future. Jamie and I have talked a lot about this. We want to work at this until No, well, I'm older than him, so until I'm dead. But there's a desire for us to want to be used in ways that move this beyond its isolation of this space, and thus the live stream, and thus the opportunity that exists. And we invite you to invest. We invite you to come with us on this journey. We want to do this with you. We can't do it without you. And this is the opportunity. There's a card in the back of each of those chairs. If you want to invest with us, just pull it out, fill it out. You can hand it to me. You can put it in one of the boxes. We're going to be out in the lobby. You can ask me any questions you have about the building, or about what we're doing, or why we're doing it. Jamie will hang out. We'll talk to you. Now, there might be somebody in the room that's going, oh, you only need $2.8 million. And you can write a check for that? You can go online and do it if you want. But we have a vision beyond that $2.8 million. We have a vision of bigger things. There's a piece of property across the street. There's another building we can build. But it's really not about the building. It's really about us doing what God's called us to do, and to hit the pivot in such a way that allows this to be more, for more people to come and hear the love story of Jesus and awaken to their true identity in Christ. Let me pray before they nail this song. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you for the unique opportunity we have as Journey Church in this spot in Brentwood, Tennessee. And as it is put on the internet and spread all around the world, Lord, I pray that you would take the message of the truth, that you love us. It's not a exchange of value, but it is you loving us, and we're awakening to it. And may it change the lives of many, many people, transforming them into the likeness of Jesus. Can we celebrate that together today, knowing that your hand is upon this place, this message, and this people, for this time, for this world needs to know that they're already loved. In Jesus' name, amen.